Sophia's in the house.
I have not put my audio on. Can you speak again?
I can hear you.
Good. All right.
Let's get Wendy up in this bitch. I was in the wrong fucking call like a chump. Like, how come nobody's here? Yep. Welcome, gang.
Hello, Jeremy. Hello, Sophia.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Like we always do at this time, we're going to jump into some impromptu networking. And I already have thought of an invitation because I was prepared today before I jumped into the wrong call and was waiting. At any rate, our invitation is, it's a good one. It's one of my favorite ones. The most productive harm I can do is.
Ooh.
The most productive harm I can do is. While Nick's getting settled in, I'm gonna just push you guys into some spaces. Poke you like this, poke you like that.
Getting into a certain state.
Guys, I'll be there in a second. 1 second. Sorry.
Nick's multitasking. He's still on Clubhouse, apparently. Awesome. Ninka.
Yeah.
Welcome to the party. This is the Wise Crows design call. This is how we always jump off.
Okay.
Right up into the mix. So what's the most productive harm you think you could do?
To this session?
I don't know.
Oh.
Sure, why not? In general.
Oh, yeah, good question. I was thinking about be there, but not be there, not like committed to the session.
Oh yeah, yeah. Be there.
I had one today and
all right.
it was horrible.
Let's see what this is all about.
Very top of mind.
There we go, Nick. Nick, what I'm gonna do is we're already in the midst of impromptu networking. So I'm gonna hustle you and Ninka into a breakout space so that you can discuss what the most productive harm you think you could do is. The most productive harm you think you could do is ...
In the group setting of this call?
Whatever, man. Hola, mi gente.
Yo.
What is up, fam?
Nothing much. How are you doing?
I'm cool.
Are you back home?
Yeah, this is home.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, this is the spot.
Do you want to see the house that I'm in? The house sitting.
That's just yeah. This is where the cats are, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty cool.
Chilling.
It's a really nice garden outside as well.
And where are you?
Nuremberg.
Okay.
Yeah. One of my good friends is in Regensburg, so it kind of like it does this kind of. But I've gone back to Austria pretty much.
Pretty close, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're already in the midst of a round of impromptu networking. Okay. And Jan is here, so I'm going to hustle you and Jan into a room, and you will quickly have the opportunity to discuss the most productive harm that I could do is. The most productive harm that I could do is. Jan, did you catch any of that, or were you still getting set up?
Is that the prompt?
That's the prompt. So the prompt for impromptu networking, I'm going to bring you and Vesta into a room, is the most productive harm that I could do is. The most productive harm that I could do is. Alexander,
Hi, Jeremy. How you
welcome.
doing?
I'm doing well. Welcome to the party.
Cheers.
Everybody else is off in breakout rooms in the midst of impromptu networking.
Yeah, sorry, I was on a client call.
No worries, no worries. We'll get you hustled into a room once everybody makes the rotation.
Cool.
Our invitation today is the most productive harm that I can do is ...
Productive harm. Is this like kind of what do you call it? Revolution, not evolution.
I'm not sure, but you know, you're free to interpret as you will, in order to help you get to know some folks and sort of warm up into the space.
Okay. So you're going to put me in a room or?
No, everybody's going to come out of their room in 50 more seconds.
Oh, okay.
We'll mix it up.
Sure. Cool. Sounds good.
And so what comes up for you, man? What's the most productive harm you think you could do? You've already invoked evolution or revolution.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my role is, it's all about productive harm, right? Pulling things apart and rebuilding them, right? Being the contrarian in the room.
Right.
What normally happens with me is like poking holes in traditional structures and organizational design, right?
Yeah, see, you're a natural. All right, welcome back, gang.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Let's see.
So where are you located, Jeremy?
This meeting is recorded.
This meeting is being recorded. Don't you forget it. The Zoom lady will tell you. I am located here in Amsterdam. That is my home. We're going to get jumped into yet another round of impromptu networking, because that's how impromptu networking works. It is 3 consecutive one-on-one conversations back to back to back. And so I'm going to change the breakout room timer because they're through the first round and mix it up real quick. So let's swap you with you, and you with you, and you with you. Let's see.
I'm getting dizzy. You're swapping me too much.
No, there's no such thing as too much swapping. I mean, maybe there is.
Oh, wow.
Let me not come out on the record of that. Well, I think I've just come out to the internet. So that just happened.
Isn't that a whole different kind of networking, Jeremy?
Yeah, definitely. There's some impromptu about my networking, if you haven't noticed.
Whoa.
Wendy, if you could ignore the prompt and hang out with me, I will. That will enable us to get started and go.
Don't worry, I'm ignoring.
And that means Jan and Alexander. I will put you with Jan. There we go.
Thank you.
Awesome. So Wendy, what's the most productive harm you think you could do?
Harm to myself.
Harm to yourself. Okay. What about that makes it productive?
Because productive is a relative term. So productive to me is an industrial, duality concept. So if I go against have to produce on time, have to do it then, have to do this.
Right. Sure. Let me see if I get you. So what you're saying is like, by like sort of subverting the whole productive paradigm towards yourself, that would actually be quite a fertile space to be in.
You are a genius, Jeremy. I think I really think your insight is just connected to another planet. It's wicked. I'm really happy.
Well, true story. We're gonna get it. We're going on a tangent together, Wendy. When I
Cool.
was like 4 years old, I used to interrogate my mom. I used to say, "Mom, I know something's up here. Like I've done all the calculations. There's only one of two conclusions. Either I am adopted and you're not my real mom, quite plausible considering my mom has very blonde hair, or I am an alien from another planet." Like I had it figured out. Those were the two options. I just didn't feel like other people. So maybe you're onto something, Wendy.
Well, I do think that, and even though we're going deep into quantum esoterics, I do think that certain members of the population, and they might be many and they might be few, are still connected to an early seeding of creation consciousness. I don't want to start to sound like some kind of cult thing here. So for instance, gold, which we all, humanity's been attracted to, and yada yada yada. It actually is formed of some of the constituents of stars and meteors. So it literally has come from, what early civilizations thought of as the gods.
Yeah, it's all star stuff until you get to what, like iron.
Yeah.
There is though like a philosophical underpinning to this idea, right? So most of sort of Western tradition is built on the idea of materialism, that the most basic thing in the world is matter, and then somehow like the artificial intelligence or cognitive scientists have this hard problem of consciousness, because how does something that is unconscious go through this phase transition to be conscious? But there's Bernardo Kastrup is one of my favorite sort of scientist philosopher dudes. He worked at CERN for a whole good long while, and he is a big proponent of this perspective that is, I think, referred to as intellectual idealism, which basically just reverses the order and says, well, actually, no, consciousness is the most basic thing in the universe, and somehow that gets divided. So there is a sort of shared consciousness or some state of awareness that, similar to multiple personality disorder, gets fractured, and when it gets fractured, we see that fracture manifest into different physical objects or bodies. So that's it's definitely not the craziest thing I've heard today.
No, it definitely is. Certainly in all of my philosophies and life walk, that resonates in terms of soundness for me. That's where my belief system resides. And if that's wrong, that's okay, because that's how I get through life in this particular form.
Word.
Next time, if I'm, manifest as a tree or something, I'll have a different perception of spatial reality and my place in it. But
right, what's all relevant, for sure. There's
what was the most productive harm you could do? Did you come up with an answer for yourself?
Oh, just burn this motherfucker down, son.
Good Lord, yeah.
That's what I'm about. Just kicking in the doors and telling. The most productive harm I could do is just be like terrifyingly, frighteningly honest and authentic to people.
Yes.
That definitely shifts paradigms, so to speak, and makes people both extraordinarily happy and like terrified and angry at the same time. Different subgroups sometimes at the same time, but there is something about just like, I have made this judgment call to like let it rip and like turn Jeremy up to 11, and everybody in the world can just fucking deal with that. So that feels like a pretty productive harm.
Yeah, I love that
perspective.
I'll come and sing that song.
Sing it loud. And you've got how this groove works, ladies and gentlemen. What is the most productive harm that you could do. I'm going to mix you up into yet another set of subgroups. If you find yourself in dialogue with a partner you've already dialogued with, then you can either, you have a choice. Everybody in this session has the ability to move around through breakout rooms. You could take it a layer deeper, or you could come interrupt another group and swap participants. So let that be the case. And so, Jan, if you will ignore the prompt and hang out with me, away we go.
Ignore. Okay.
And I say Jan like it's a Jan, but yep, I guess it's not Jan. I guess it's Jan. Also cool. This is what I'm going to do. Nick, did you already talk to Jan?
No.
No? Okay. Then that's how.
Back I am. Sorry.
No worries. Let's see.
I'm a rebel by nature, so I ignored your.
Awesome. Sophia's just getting it in. So yeah,
I didn't understand well.
Sophia yet?
Yeah, sure. So one too much, right? So I left again. Three weren't supposed to be in one room. I didn't really understand in the beginning what you meant with what was that? Productive harm. So something you did which caused harm but was unintentionally productive. That's the way to read it, right?
That could be. I mean, it's pretty open for interpretation. God knows,
Okay.
in my last conversation, we got super philosophical with it. But yeah, I mean, productive harm.
What is the most productive you could do right now, Jeremy?
The most productive harm I could do, hang up on this call and take a nap. Like, that would be terrifically productive and very disruptive at the same time. So that's one sort of action potential. The most productive harm I could do, I could. I could leave it up to. I could give the hosting role to someone else. That could be pretty turbulent.
Yeah, but it's not productive, isn't it?
It could be very productive. Like if I put Wendy on the spot, Wendy's been to this call a couple times, so that could be cool. That could be a learning experience that she might be down for.
Is it productive when the outcome is undetermined and could be very, very bad, also very, very good, but you don't know the percentages or probabilities? Is it productive?
Well, I mean, this is an interesting question. Now we're talking, right? So I guess that depends on like the sort of rigor of our experimentation, right? Do we have a relatively clear hypothesis? Do we,
right.
Are we willing, are we in a space where we feel like we want to roll the dice and see what happens?
You mean like a safe space where nothing really disruptive to the company can happen?
So I have a personal allergy to the term safe space, because safe spaces, safe spaces are very different than what we imagine them to be, right? A safe space is one which actually enables people to like kick me in the face when I'm full of shit and engage in conflict that might be actually in other contexts not even possible. So
you disrupt the threat of mutual harm through safe spaces and encourage extreme behavior. Is that what you?
I would say it's more like, can I jump in? I think it's more like you create a space where you're allowed to feel really deeply and express those emotions, and whatever comes up, and whatever actions it shows up as. And so if you're going to punch each other, it's still healing because you're releasing these unexpressed emotions. Hopefully we don't create like a fucking like Brawl Stars sort of like fighting scene or something, but like, you know, it's a potential expression of unleashed energy that just wants to be expressed. And it's
doesn't depend on doesn't this depend on the other person who's getting hit to agree on this, or?
Yes, but maybe we're using puppets. I think we're using puppets.
Ah, right.
Be really realistic puppets for if you want, but like.
Right.
Puppets.
I like it. Exactly. So yeah, it could go on all types of different.
Right.
And safety is, I don't think a safe space. Well, when I look at it this way, like if a safe space is a space where we all have to agree, that could also be like the most potentially violent imaginable. Because what do we do in the face of disagreement? Do we exclude it from the building? Do we just do we just are we so terrified of disrupting the safety that we just withhold all of our information and our sort of energy from the space?
Right. So anything which exclude the part of the reality and to create an illusionary safe space, actually this is actually harmful, because you cannot exclude it. It's there, and will sometimes raises its ugly face.
Yeah, and this is like very super. This is like fundamental group dynamic 101, right? In groups dynamic, that's what everybody does at the beginning of the context. Is like, hey, I'm on my best behavior, you're on your best behavior.
Right.
And then over time, whatever you want to call it, the storming phase, or the fight phase, that those differences pop out of the woodwork, and then it makes us feel something.
Who's that?
So welcome back to the jam, everybody. This is the Wise Crowds Liberating Structures design call. I better prepare and get you guys a link to the Google Doc so that you can work with us wherever that might be. So the Wise Crowds design call, what we're going to do is do this give and get help thing so that we can enable at least a couple people in this call to have a higher action potential of making use of liberating structures than you might normally without the assistance of the people in this call. So after I have shared with you this link, I will also share my screen so that we can all work together and get rocking and rolling. And that should be to the doc. And you've just seen our invitation. No need to take a look at the guest book. On the top of this document, you'll see a guest book. Put your name and email in the guest book, and that will enable me to send you a link to download your participation badge. For those of us in the know, that is a non-fungible token, an NFT that will enable us to create your track record and your proof of learning for liberating structures. In the context of this call, we have a predictably large separation of different skill levels that are present with us. So everybody, regardless of your skill level, has an important membership role that you can help us take on. For despairing cynics in the room, familiar with no liberating structures or very, very few, then you have a great job, which is you can help us to challenge assumptions. You can ask the hard why questions for our blind spots by going, well, why do you think that would work, or stuff like that. For the optimists in the house that are familiar with plus or minus 5, a fistful of structures, if you can help out, prevent me especially from being presumptive and ask for clarification. If I start to yammer on about some stuff you've never heard before, point at that and help us make sure that we unpack it for people that are even less experienced than yourself, so that we can all be together and learn as we go. For the super users in the house, familiar with plus or minus half of the Liberating Structures toolkit, then if you can step into the spotlight, even if you don't feel ready, and answer questions that you're not quite sure if your answers are perfect and polished or absolutely right, but just step on in and get your reps up. That will also enable the Maestro minimalists in the house, familiar with more or less the whole repertoire of liberating structures, to make space for you and then to build on your explanation based on their familiarity and experience. So like I said, regardless of what membership role or what your stage of development in this overall liberating structures learning journey, there is good work that you can help the whole group out with. And today we are going to make use of the liberating structures wise crowds. For anybody that has used Troika Consulting, you'll notice this looks very, very similar. One person will take on the role of the client, and everybody else in the group will take on the role of consultants. And the client is going to tell us a little bit about their help request or their design brief. And then the consultants are going to ask some clarifying questions. What's important to know about those clarifying questions is those are genuine clarifying questions. Those are not clarifying questions, or those are not advice hidden in clarifying questions. I'll also invite you to try and avoid asking like super tough coaching questions, because what we're trying to do is gather more information about the context so that we can provide relevant advice. After we have asked our clarifying questions, the client is going to turn off their webcam and microphone, but very importantly, listen to the conversation of us consultants. And the consultants are just going to have a conversation about two questions in particular. What structures come to mind having heard this client's help request, and how might we connect those structures to each other and sort of string them together to design a cohesive experience that might address the client's design brief. And after we've had that conversation and unpacked the things that we have that came to mind, the client will return to the call and tell us what they took away from the consultation of us, the wise crowd. And then we'll ask somebody else to take on the role of client, and if we're lucky, do it all over again. So does anybody have any questions about the nuts or bolts of the structure that we're going to be working with? And then in that case, what we're going to do is jump into the design storyboard, which you can see right here. I'll make a copy and a fresh one for us to work with. And then we can get into the wood with a design brief. So who today brought a help request or a design brief for us to work on? We've got Sophie with one. Awesome. I know Nick has one. I'll put him on the spot. So cool. So since Nick is MIA, Sophie, I guess we'll just jump into yours for them right quick, and then we'll hook up Nick and see what's good. So tell us about your design brief.
All right, so I am doing sort of a team restart. I am working with about 10 people. They have been working together for more than 3 years, most of them, not always directly. None of them know each other super well, but all of them kind of know each other. And they would like to work together more. And they also would like to define how they want to work together and what they would like to strive for, mostly. I have 2 times 3 hours to do some sessions with. One of them is tomorrow morning. That one is about how are we going to work together. That one is prepped. I'm okay with that one. Next week is the other one. And that's about, we have some standards from the organization, some goals we have to kind of adhere to, but we might also have our own goals or our own vision of where this is going and how we would like to develop products and develop software. So yeah, and basically I know I have 3 hours. I know I want to do some kind of purpose to practice kind of stuff, but how to divide such a big block of time into something more tangible is a challenge for me.
So let me check. So we've got a sort of team restart, and it sounds like there's a combination of both like very practical day-to-day stuff, but also it sounds like some more aspirational factors you want to bring in. And how big is the group? And did you say 2 blocks of 3 hours?
Yes. Yeah. So the question is about the second block mostly. The group is 11 big, give or take 1, depending on whether you count me.
And is this going to be an online event or an offline?
So offline.
Offline, so in person?
Yep.
Yay, meet space. It feels so good. Cool. Any other clarifying questions?
I've got a real basic one. Why, if you know this or sense this, have they allocated so little time to achieving a way of finding a better way to work together more, how they're going to work together, and how they might address both the company goals and their goals? The timing to me feels really short, and for me that feels like there's something in that in terms of commitment and something the way that the company works and runs.
It is the minimum time I gave them. I said I will not do it in less than a day. This is what happened partially. It's also, I think, there's no one else in the company who does these kinds of things, and it's the first time that I will be doing it. So there's also just a question of experience with these kinds of session. And I think I also need to build some trust in that it actually can result in something. Because if you don't know what you're getting from it, an investment of a day is actually quite something already.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Why did they want to do the team restart?
Because there have been a lot of organizational changes in the last 3 years. This organization is moving from a project-based organization to a product-based organization. So we're starting to discover product development. We are reorganizing which people work together and how they should do their work, basically. There is a management since half a year, but even then, that's still quite new. A lot of people want to, I think, know where they stand in all of this and what they feel or want about it all.
Got a question. Are you familiar with the group's social context, or for example, I'm imagining some people maybe have left in the last year or so,
Yes.
or is it something you're working to get to know? Okay,
no, I have worked here for 3 years now.
Okay.
So I have seen indeed some people come and go in the last time. Yeah.
What's the communication style in the group? Is it collaborative, or is it sometimes or more often confrontative, or do you have some guys who take a lot of space, very extroverted, some guys are very introverted? Is there a lot of is there a big range between the personalities?
Mostly introverts, mostly collaborative, sometimes as a group a little hesitant. So I think part of why we're doing this now is because I really wanted to learn this for some reason that's not related to this company. really. And I asked for this, and the time happened to be sort of right. So I set the date, and now we're doing this. Yeah.
I guess I want to come back a little bit more towards the intention. So it sounds like there's a very practical aspect that you mentioned, purpose to practice and sort of working agreements, stuff like that. When you think about this space of aspiration, like what would be your ideal sense that people leave the room with?
I would like for people to agree on what our purpose is as a team. And I would like a first step of what we can do to move there. Ideally, but I realize that this is ambitious a little, I would also like to know how we're gonna evaluate the first step and move on to the second step. And that doesn't have to be big, but like I would hate for this to become a one-time thing and then never to revisit again.
Have you used, sorry, Wendy, go ahead, sorry.
I'll write it down. Oh, go ahead, Jan.
Okay. Have you used the things like OKR, objects and key results, as a kind of identifying of team goals? And
I have no idea what that means.
This is sneaky advice.
Sneaky.
Hold on, Jan. We'll get into it in just a second. I see where you're going there.
Okay.
Could I? This is, my questions are never deep, Sophia. So don't be worried. What do you feel or sense, I wanted to say, is the greatest obstacle to the success? And I know you haven't defined success, you've defined it in a few words. Or what is your greatest fear? What's the worst thing that's in your mind that might or could happen? What are you?
The worst fear for me personally is to fail so badly that they won't let me try again. Like to traumatize everyone. That's worst case scenario. I think for the organization, to land in some kind of stalemate where everybody's looking at each other to state their intentions.
Okay, so that's the second time I've heard that there is some form of hesitancy in the communication within the group. And I'm wondering if that's about personalities or status, or just the confusion of going from project functionality to product functionality. I'm hearing hesitancy / confusion.
Confusion, a little bit of confusion. I think it's also a little bit of confusion of what are we still allowed to decide for ourselves and what is with management. Because that's also not very clear yet.
So one of the big issues is around agency, and that's, you're going into this even not clear about that, is that right?
Yeah, so I have one of management in the room, so I hope that will help.
Okay.
Can consultants only ask questions, or can we also like address stuff?
At this moment, we're just getting clarification. We'll tee up in just a flash. That feels like a good transition. I just want to clarify on one point that Sophie brought in. So it sounded like this is a development team. Is that about right? And you made mention that there will be someone in a leadership role also present.
Yes, they have a dual role.
They have a dual role. That sounds like interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that dual role?
They're both a developer and part of management. So they write code, but also they strategize in ways that I don't.
are they leading in a technical role as well as a management role, or is it just the management side?
Just the management role. I also have our we call them team leads, but they're just like but yeah.
What is your role except for having
I'm a
these
developer.
sessions? You're the developer of the team.
Yeah.
Are you guys determining or still haven't determined the products you're going to focus on, or is it clear where?
Product is clear.
Okay.
And also, I won't have the product owner in the room, so I'm not gonna go too much into detail of the product itself in session.
Why is the product owner not involved?
Because he's technically not part of the team.
Okay.
Yeah. I need to say something like it has. I feel like I just have to say this because I need to like bring this energy into the room. Like the vibe I'm getting from you, like because you expressed that underlying fear of yours, that deep trauma of what you see as a failure of the event. Like what I want to say is like you're gonna add value by doing this regardless of what you see as the super successful outcome, whatever. Like by you doing this exercise with them, it will be valuable for them regardless. The fact that you're having this conversation with us already shows me that you know what the fuck you're doing and like you're gonna fucking add value to this thing anyway. So just to speak to that underlying fear, I want you to know like yeah, you're coming in with the intention of, I want to help you guys and help clarify the vision. Because you're coming from that good place, they will value what you're bringing in like automatically. So just for you to maybe transcend that fear of yours, so you can actually ask deeper questions or more interesting questions of like, okay, let's take that fear out of the way. Let's talk about making this fun and exciting and cool and, you know.
Awesome. And let's make this the hard cut. So Sophie, if you can turn off your webcam and mic, and then we will get into consultation. So Nick's already dropped us a nice seed of a vibe to lean into, to go for the more intense and hardcore questions, because we think we can deliver some good here. So what are some ideas about structures or processes or tooling that comes up that you might like to bring into this space and suggest for Sophia?
Can I throw something out to test my own learning progress? And feel free to say, good God, no, that's the wrong thing. Would something like 1, 2, 4 whole be a structure that would work in this situation, or not, or why?
So can anybody guess what I'm going to say? Yes. I think 1, 2 for all is like pound for pound. Somehow it is the most underestimated structure imaginable, because it is so damn good. And yet it's so simple. Like, what if, like, I'll throw it back and go, all right, Wendy, I think you could do the entire 3 hours of just repeating 1, 2, 4 all over and over and over again. And that would probably feel fucking amazing.
I was going to suggest a practice. I'm not sure it fits directly into liberating structures, but I heard it mention something around understanding responsibility and accountability and who's making the decisions. And one of the tools I find really useful for that is Delegation Poker. I don't know if anyone's used that before. That's kind of a fun way in a team to understand and get on a page what we really actually are delegating and what we aren't. So if there's a manager in the room, trying to go through that and do in a poker kind of style, what we think we have power to decide on and what we're actually going to get power, and then having that debate on how far that goes is a useful tool I've used before. I don't know if anyone else has.
Alexander, what do you feel is the relationship or the impact on the dynamics using that in that you know, poker is about hiding and plotting and trying to figure out what the other person's doing. How in your experience has that worked?
So I'd say it's the opposite, right? It's about, we're not quite sure what we're all thinking. So without kind of predetermining it. So one of the problems is if you all do it on a whiteboard together, you're going to drive each other's input, right? So what we do is basically it's the 1, 2, 4, but you do it kind of as a 1 to all. So you all hide your decision and then you reveal it together at the same time. So there's no kind of preemptive, oh, so someone said that, or the managers said this, so we'll all go along with it. You get like a real kind of the actual input from what people are thinking, rather than kind of making a bunch of assumptions or driving the conversation because, I don't know, the managers decided it's a delegation decision and therefore everyone goes along with it, right? We want to have that discussion about where on the gray line of decision making is it, rather than having a binary, right?
And so it might help, I think, since we have some, it seems like some ambiguity around delegation poker, if we unpack it maybe a little bit more and give folks a range, a feel for what we're talking about.
Sure. Do you want me to explain? Yeah. So I don't know if anyone's done planning poker before, but it's a similar concept. So each person has a deck of cards, or just have the opportunity to decide on a scale of tell, sell, consult. I think the middle one, I can't remember, advise, inquire, and delegate. So like there's a scale of how much you're going to delegate decision making. You choose a number of important topics that you'll need to decide on as a team, and you work together as a group to understand what's the level of kind of decentralizing you're going to do in terms of decisions, right? So if your manager's decided, if it's to do with financial funding of the team, then it's always going to be me telling you what the budget's going to be, right? You're not going to be delegated to decide expenses for the team, for example, right? And you'll have a go and you decide on that, and then you have a conversation about where you think you are on the scale, and as a group you come to an agreement on the level of delegation you're going to get. And you go through each of the most important, probably key areas that you're going to make decisions on as a team, and you agree as a group. And publicly kind of state it, the agreement on the levels of delegation you're going to have. If that makes sense. You're basically scaling the level of delegation on each topic.
And so does each individual then go away and say, like, based on the agreed upon categories and level of decision making, they go away and match that up for each one, and then we all come back out together and say, okay, so this is our list of things we decide on and who does it.
So you do it as a group. So it's basically you all reveal what you think it should be, and then you have a discussion, right, with your manager and the other people in the team to go, actually, you said it's a delegate, but actually because I've got to report in to some senior sponsor, I can't 100% delegate this. I need to be informed, for example, right?
Can I throw that in? I had the feeling that the team was at the stage where they didn't know what to do. How they, I mean, they didn't even know. I got the impression that they didn't even know which product to focus on. I mean, what they're going to do in the next weeks or even day, or so the question pops in my mind when I listen to this structure is like, when you don't know what to do, how can you already decide what to delegate, what to not delegate? Isn't it a step? I mean, wouldn't that be the second step after finding out what to do?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Bit of devil's advocate here, but that's
no. I was just one tool, right? I'm not saying we only.
Right.
Yeah. I definitely think we need to define what their purpose is, right?
Right. I had no idea what I mean. Okay, products, but when I probed a bit, then yeah. Is there a liberating structure? I'm sorry, I don't know a lot of them. Is there a liberating structure to select the goal, or I mean, that's why. Sorry, Jamie, that's why I came up with OKRs. It's not a liberating structure, but defining goals is it's a process for defining what to do.
I'm not a teacher, so like if you guys would do me a solid and like just
I'm just going to step up because I'm just a learner. And again, it's great to have like other people's experience and viewpoints. My thought about defining intention makes me think of 9 questions, which is also super simple. It means that even overnight, you know, if day 1 is even about 1, 2, 4 whole, then even overnight, each person can go home and do 9 questions or have a break and go in another room, especially when you have a dynamic where the roles sound really fuzzy to me. And in that, this is going to be a new way of working together. I think the power dynamics are really going to be in play. And so to give people a safe space, something like 9 questions gives each person a safe space, and they could come up with an answer, or they might not come up to an answer. Posing the question, say, what is our intention, sort of thing.
Can I ask for a brief explanation of what 9 questions is, please?
You keep on asking why, like 5 or 9 times.
Yeah, the 9 whys, right?
Yeah. So if someone's
so
if someone's answering the first why, then you can ask again, but why, and then you can uncover in the end the real problem or cause or underlying thing. But I always find it pretty difficult.
And it can be done individually. So you can put a question up for yourself. You know, why am I on this session today? And then out of that answer, there comes another question. And out of that answer, there comes another question. And you really, it's a great way of getting rid of the layers of the onion quite quickly.
Right.
Totally. So there's a little bit of information. So Sophia mentioned that she is intending already to do purpose to practice. So this is the pattern where we go from purpose around our goals or intentions into principles, into like your large abstracts. What do we need to do in order to accomplish that purpose? And we talk about participants and sort of what are our relative roles. And then we think about structures that might help us support us in those relationships, and then we would get into practices. So that's a bit more the where the rubber hits the road around working agreements and stuff that we think about doing. So already there is some intentionality around that sort of practical space. What I really get a sense is, and I think, Jan, you're absolutely on the right track when you think about OKRs, is around this idea of aspiration. So in hearing Sophia, I have this what really stuck out for me is this sense of not just progress, but really aspiration. So what is the state that we want to get to? And maybe not around the product itself, but around the collaboration. And she mentioned that there's also this ambiguity around sort of autonomy and agency, which feels like a really fertile space to lean into. So, so Jan, if you can foreground, what was it that made about hearing the situation that made OKRs seem like a tool, and maybe offer some description for those of us that aren't familiar with them?
I've worked with them a little bit. I'm not a specialist. OKRs basically, it's an alignment tool. OKR stands for objectives and key results. Objectives, there's some requirements for the objectives. Objectives have to be very short. So 1 sentence. If you have to take another breath, it's not an objective. You have to say it in 1 breath. But very simple, and it cannot contain numbers. So it's more like this fuzzy thing. Like, for example, we want to be the greatest customer experience having company in this space. No, that's too long already. That's an objective. And key results are the that's answering the question how. These are measurements containing numbers. One requirement is that they're measurable, and they are basically the controlling instance for or showing us the progress we're making on the way to achieving those objectives. For example, we want to be the greatest, having the greatest customer experience, and there's this variable customer experience. Let's say a customer experience measurement, and then we go from 1 to 10, for example. That will be a key result. And I came to this idea because I felt they were lost. The team knew itself for a long time, it seems like, but the direction of the team wasn't clear because they changed from one structure to another. And the products were clear, but they haven't worked on those products before. So they were kind of trying to find out how to self-organize themselves around the goal of like producing those products or features or whatever. So when they have an objective, everybody can align themselves on, then they can find out what key results are we using, what key results are we utilizing, what are we working on to go towards achieving those objectives. So I thought this is more like gives them kind of a roadmap. That was my kind of thinking.
And maybe a very practical thing, making that visible, just draw it, your objective, how can you measure it, how do you want to do it, and how to get there. Maybe something nice to do. But I also am a bit wondering why the product owner isn't there, because maybe he has an important role as well in this, although he isn't part of the team, which I'm a bit surprised of, but I'm a Scrum Master, so. And I was also thinking about why is the team manager there, because that could maybe do something with the vibe of the group if they feel safe enough, or maybe they're just talking among what the manager is saying. Then you don't get the best out of everyone's head, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so not like very concrete things to do, but a lot of questions I was still wondering about, or things that I'm surprised about.
I think maybe I wanted to ask if there's a liberating structure that has something to do with someone being able to tell you their past, or like, because the context here is that people have been working together for a number of years now. So what we wouldn't want is someone to go out of this and feel like, oh, damn, like people think I'm this, but I actually want to do this. It's a very golden time to kind of realign incentives. So to get a chance for people to say, hey, this is my journey, you know, this is what I did in the past, or this is what I've been doing. I would really like to actually pivot, or I would really like to build on this. I'd like to manage a few more things. And I think I don't know, is there a tool that can allow people to express that?
Not sure if there's a tool for it, but I definitely have ideas.
Maybe it could be the question for 1, 2, 4.
There's some possibility in there. What you got, Jan?
No, I was just wondering whether Wendy, she knows a lot about a lot of liberating structures. Maybe she has an idea.
I know about a lot of liberating structures throughout my life and my own practice. I'm only just learning about the official version from, no, I'm not going to try and pronounce that word. Too quick. From
Henry.
Mr. McCandless and Henri. Storytelling always has, it's a really powerful tool. And it could be that, again, it could be a journal, it could be an overnight thing, Vesta. So people go home and go, where did I start? And they can start anywhere. They can start at 3 years old. You know, I loved drawing, or I loved sticking, you know, sticks in potatoes, whatever it is. that brought them through to here I am in this position at this place. There's always a connect somewhere. And then, you know, what's the secret thing that I've never done or wanted to do? You can phrase it in a whole number of ways, as long as you just say to them, this is not about forever. You know, write your own story about how you get here and where you think you might want to be going, both as an individual in the company, but also maybe with the team. And you can leave it as kind of a free-form creative exercise. But again, we're going back to Ninka's point about agency and status and all that kind of thing. So that's going to have to come in the housekeeping from up front, because that really can skew stuff badly. I'm sure it's evolved, but I have had client groups years and years ago when I gave feedback to everybody, because they were all in the same group. And I was taken aside by the CEO and said, you never give me feedback in front of my subordinates.
Word. The sketchy vibes are legion in group work. So there's a couple things I want to foreground and to pick up a couple of the threads that sounds like we've put down. So we have this thread around OKRs. We have this thread around the sort of vibe and around sort of autonomy and agency. So let me do the screen share thing to get this guy back so that I can walk you through one of my frames that I like to use that is kind of, when I think about OKRs, I think about two things: experimentation and around what, so what, now what. So what, so what, now what wants us to separate the what, the factual, observable data, from the inference or the meaning or the impact of that data, from the action that we might undertake as a response to that data. So one of the structures that I use, it's not a liberating structure per se, but is really good hygiene, is the Strategyzer test card. So this allows you to set up a falsifiable hypothesis, the way I've sort of remixed it. And this image is apparently too large to see on a single page. And I don't, if anybody knows how to get into the doc and change that, that would be incredible. Let's try this. Yes, we have the skills. Keep going. So it asks us to set up our hypothesis in sort of 4 steps. Our baseline belief: what do we think about the world? What's our assumption? What's our test? You know, what are we going to do to verify or to probe that assumption? And what are we going to look at in terms of metrics? What are we going to observe that lets us know how it actually went? And when people think about key results, as well as when they think about metrics, they often think about numbers, which is fine. Quantitative data, it can be great, but qualitative data also counts, right? So if you can put some way of making some observation about that qualitative data, that's fair enough, as long as it's sort of relatively rigorous. One of my favorite ways to get qualitative data is, hey, you know, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much did you like it? Right? 1 being low, 5 being high. That's fair enough. What we're doing is we're making some observation and we're making it explicit about what the qualities were in that observation. And then last but not least is our criteria. As you can see, I've altered this card a little bit. I prefer a classic null hypothesis that I can falsify rather than having a classical hypothesis. The reason for that is this actually enables me to do a little bit of risk management and prevents me from skewing the results of my observation in the direction of what I think success already looks like. So the question of we are wrong if, what would I look to see if my hypothesis just turns out to be absolute crap? And that way I can keep those things in mind and figure out how I might be able to avoid that consequence. So this is a really explicit way to put things on the wall, so to speak, about, hey, this might be how we could get to that next state. So to me, this lines up quite well with objectives and key results, because you have your objective, you have your hypothesis, your ambition, so to speak. You have a test, what you're going to do that might help you enable you to get there, and you have your key results and your metrics. You have your measurements. The funny joke around objectives and key results for me is that key results especially take a lot of search to find valid key results. You might be trying for 2 years, to find key results that actually line up to the objectives that you have. And part of the process is to, hey, we think that we'll see these things move if we're headed in the right direction, and to discover which ones turn out to be irrelevant, which ones turn out to be, counter indicators. Like, I've had lots of instances where I crushed my objective, didn't move the key results whatsoever, and vice versa, crushed the key results, didn't make any goddamn progress on the objective. So there is a search function that is sort of inherent in that. So this might be one tool that you can use that also, like I said, lines up with what, so what, now what, in my perspective. Another thing that I might encourage Sophia to do is to take a good hard look at TRIZ, due to the fact that, if there is this question around agency and around vibe and around leadership roles, using TRIZ as a way to bring in those, hey, we have questions about this stuff and it's kind of a little bit on the edge, is a really nice way to first, bring it in, because how funny would it be if we, if we made the manager, if he gave everybody failing reports, to use that sort of laughableness to bring in what is a very legitimate concern. Future present is also an interesting structure if you really want to lean into ambition. Future present asks you to tell a story from a future perspective where you're looking back. So if you imagine yourself, 2-5 years in the future, when this team's composition is changed and you have crushed all of your objectives, what is the story that you might tell somebody who's just joining your organization about what it was like to go from this current state into your ideal state? So you're sort of activating this imaginal quality and sort of dreaming yourself into a possible future. And last but not least, a structure that I think would be very, very helpful would be wicked questions, especially around this topic that is autonomy and agency. Like, hey, what is the sort of minefield that we might have to navigate? How is it that we are both autonomous agents and we are well coordinated at the same time? Because we want both of those. We want people to use their best judgment and let it rip. And we also want to augment our best judgment with each other's best judgment. And last but not least, this is a visual that goes through one particular way that I think is really interesting to land on wicked questions. There's a lot of different ways that you can use to land on wicked questions. And what this one asks you to do is come up with some core quality, then look for its sort of its extreme that becomes a pitfall. So in this instance, we have contemplative, and contemplative is great, but too much of that good thing leads us to overthinking. And then if we think about, so what's the positive opposite of overthinking, we might come up with intuition. And hey, what's too much of a good thing that of this intuition might be, this sort of sense of chaos and unpredictableness, which leaves us with this wicked question around, how is it that I can be contemplative while still relying on my intuition, right? So it sort of goes around this whole circle to help us land on the wickedness in the wicked questions. So those might be a couple structures that I would encourage Sophia to check out in response to this design brief. Does anybody have something that hasn't been brought up yet, or should we get Sophia back to give us her takeaways from this dialogue?
I think we can go back. I had a very important question that just really came up that I wanted to express. it's not directed to this thing anymore that we're talking about. It's more meta. It's more like, Jeremy, has anybody ever told you that you are changing the world with the work that you're doing?
Thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate that. It's really hard for me to hear that and to make space for it. And so what I'm going to do very subtly is invite Sophia back to come give us her takeaways about hearing the dialogue that we have that we've just laid down for her.
Don't embarrass people. No.
Save me, Sophia. Save me from this appreciation. Thank you, Nicholas. Appreciate it.
So I think the main takeaway is I thought about this, and I thought about things through, and I have many things to check out. So I'm very grateful to all of you for that, because I have some homework to do, and I'm happy that I have some handholds to do it now.
What is the first thing you're going to check?
What is the first thing I'm going to check? I think I'm gonna really check out Delegation Poker. I'm gonna think about how I can use storytelling as well, because I've used several different ways for that. I understand the hierarchy worries, or at least questions, but personally I'm not too afraid of that in this case. But yes, did I get everybody that needs to be in the room? I don't know. So yeah, lots of things to think on, really.
For sure, lots of things to think on all day, every day. And then one thing I might encourage is like just lean into tomorrow, right? For right now. So
I'm not looking any of this up today.
Yeah, exactly. just do run through purpose to practice, and that'll take 3 hours. No problem whatsoever. What was up, Jan?
I'm curious. Why do you think delegation poker is a good structure, or is maybe a good fit for your problem?
So basically, I think I was thinking that I like what I heard about OKRs, but they're a little bit too specific for what I'm looking for right now. I think we're not in a place where we can use them yet. So I have listed them for a little later.
Okay.
And I think delegation poker is something we could do now to explore relations now.
Cool.
Thank you. Very good.
Thanks, Sophia. Appreciate your help request. And while we still got time, what I'm going to do is put Nicholas on the spot for putting me on the spot and go tell us about your design brief, our design brief technically, but.
Yeah, I mean, there's also another one that I could introduce to the space where I would be using liberating structures.
Awesome.
But I mean, all I'm doing is I already know what I'm doing. I'm just going to do 1, 2, 4, and yeah, let it rip. But for our one is so. How much time do we have? Because I'm like, it's been a long call already.
Mm-hmm. So we've got 15 minutes left on the agenda, more or less.
I'll have to leave after that, so be fast.
I'll try. I'll be super succinct and get straight to the essence of some sort of meaningful inquiry. So Jeremy and I met at the Refi conference, the Regenerative Finance conference. I also met Besta, who's on this call there. And it was awesome. It changed my life. I sort of became like awakened or something. I don't know, like it's crazy. And I want to share that experience with a lot of people. So I've gotten quite involved in the space. And anyway, in any case, okay, on Friday, Jeremy and we organized a decompression call because I fucking need to decompress this experience with the people that I experienced it with. And so we have a 2-hour session in which we want to like sort of decompress in the wildest sense of the word. And that's the intention. It's 2 hours. It's going to be awesome regardless of what happens, but how can we make it as awesome as possible using liberating structures? That's sort of the energy. Do you need more information, or are you good?
When you say, what kind of decompression is your decompression?
That's the starting question for the session, perhaps. We could ask everybody to express something about that. Or, okay, or we do it now. If I say, I mean, decompression, I mean, I would feel something like a lot. I want to hear from everybody. I want everybody to speak up. I want everybody to share how their experience has been since this thing, because for me, it's been so fucking intense and meaningful and beautiful that, am I the only one, or has something actually happened between all of us? Yeah.
I think because I've got to go.
Yeah.
And I wasn't at the event, but I just have a response to this space, which I'm sure if you were together in a live space must be this magnified by a gazillion. And this is alchemy. I've been on the planet a lot longer than most of the people I meet on these things, and I've been in this field you know, for a bazillion years, and could have been there, done that, got the t-shirt, you know, danced, fell over, got drunk, and then woke up the next day in another forest. This is really, it is the change that you're so excited about. So I just want to just acknowledge that. And if I jump off and go away, it's not, I have to get on another 90-minute call in 10 minutes, and I have to go smoke a fag.
Thanks, Wendy. Appreciate that.
I reckon the main challenge is the fact that so many interesting things are happening. You have a lot of very interesting, intelligent people. We are drawn to each other energetically, but each of us has quite a lot of new things to bring to each other as well. So I think what we've all probably be doing in our own time, maybe some of us more than others and others being busy, is that, you know, we are sifting through many opportunities, many ideas, lots of resources out there. And I reckon it's more about kind of curating what is most important to you. And I've been talking to Klaus recently, and he keeps referring to, like, you know, the temple, like what is really at the heart here, if we really want to kind of at least focus in on the practical actions that we'd like to take. I know for myself, that's my main thing is I would like practicality and the ability to connect, and I'm so with you on that. Like the fact that I'm finding people that are really making those connections that I thought were just a fantasy for myself, it can now be a reality.
Okay, so I just saw the Friday session, and I think 1, 2, 4, but only after we did the 9 questions to get like to the very core of what we're trying to figure out together. Like through those 9 questions, it will also show what is the intention of every individual for showing up at this fucking decompression call at 12 p.m. on a Friday. Like that's a meaningful time. And once we uncovered like the core questions, then we do the 1, 2, 4 process, where we first think for ourselves, then together, and then we let it rip.
All right, let me do my job, Nick. I'll ask you to mute yourself and turn off your webcam, and let's see what comes up, what the wise crowd has got for us. So we kind of hear sense the vibe from both Nick and Vesta about, you know, what the space is and what comes up for you guys about how we might be able to decompress.
I had to think about shift and share, but not pretty sure how it works. So no clue if it is applicable, but I thought so.
Cool.
Yeah, I have the intention to check it at the moment, but maybe I shouldn't do that.
So could you maybe give us a little context, Nika, for kind of the nuts and bolts, how shift and share normally works?
Yeah, I have to really look it up how it works. But I was thinking, why I was thinking this is because I heard Nicholas saying that he would find it very interesting if the others also shared their experiences. So that's why I was thinking about this one.
Cool. Anybody else?
I was wondering if appreciative interviews would work here. I've never tried it, but I don't know. It sounds like it might fit in a way.
So what is it about appreciative interviews that pings for you? Makes you...
I think I would like to, I think people would like to share. Yeah, I'm the second to last person in the building, which is why I might have to close off, and I've never done that before. So that's what happened just now, in case you were wondering.
No worries.
It sounds like it was a transformative experience. I would like to, if I am going to decompress, to tell about that, to share that experience. And I think having someone there to just ask questions and be super interested in your experience, and then to being able to reciprocate that through structure, I think that brings something for me in this case.
Cool. I like it. The structures that jump out for me for around this idea of decompression, especially sharing for across a group. So what now what? Again, this pattern of separating factual observation about what has occurred to me since then, what that sort of means to me and what the impact of those occurrences are, and then what I might do now seems relevant. I might use that as more of a macro structure across the course of the whole call rather than focusing it on one particular, using it as a pattern by itself. Conversation cafe comes to mind as a good structure for this idea of decompression. Conversation cafe, real briefly, is, you know, in a group of 4, 5, 6 people, go around the circle once around the prompt, go around the circle twice, responding to each other's responses, and then some space for an unstructured discussion, and then go around the circle again to share takeaways. Also seems like a particularly relevant structure. And last but not least is this one, actually, wise crowds, especially in response to this idea of practicality and really opening the space up for collaboration. Wise crowds would be a really good structure of, hey, you know, all right, you know, what are you working on? And why not just let people, you know, let us, you know, chop it up and offer some advice about the actual project you're working in. That way we can deliver some legit value, some #real value for the folks. And that could be so valuable that we want to continue to come back into the structure. Is there anything that jumps out for you guys that I haven't mentioned?
Well, you were talking about conversation cafe, and then I also had to think about Mad Tea, because it's also applicable to very large groups, but not sure if it was an online call or if it's like a physical one. Online may be a bit harder, maybe not.
It'll be online.
Maybe it's also possible online.
What is this called again? Would you mind repeating it?
Mad Tea.
Mad Tea.
Yeah.
It's the one that we did in Regions Unite on the the morning of the second day with the one-on-ones. So it's extraordinarily hard to do in online. What you can do that works really well as an alternative is to use the chat. So in response to the prompt, we refer to this as the sort of chatterfall. Maybe you've heard that, where everybody types their response into the prompt, but doesn't hit enter, so that on the sign of go, everybody's answers show up at once. And then you can take a few minutes or a minute or so to just read through the responses of everybody else. And that way you can sort of generate a lot of sort of information. So that might be a good alternative. All right. Well, then, Niklas, why don't you come back in and offer us what you take away?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things we could do, but we only have 2 hours, so it has to be like we need to chat again before we do this, and then narrow down like a very solid thing that's also like we want to stick to time because we have to, because it's only 2 hours, but we still want to allow enough room for emergence. So I would have like a plan in place with a lot of flexibility. However, I think doing appreciative interviews and recording them, that seems like something, I mean, if it wants to be recorded, it can also be a thing that's timeless, which is even more beautiful. And if the intention is to make it beautiful, maybe we do that. However, there is a lot of fucking value that may be expressed, so to record it, why not? And then that being like the end, like the first hour perhaps, and the second hour it could be this wise crowds move where it's more generative and more opening again, and more, and then allow them to realize, or allow everybody to notice like, oh shit, this is like legit value. The same thing I'm experiencing through this call, or through what I experienced now after listening to you guys. Like, okay, hashtag real value. This is what crypto should be about, like giving value to what we're doing. And then make it a recurring session. I don't know, how often. Is it weekly? Is it bi-weekly, monthly? We all decide. We can maybe create an NFT where we can collectively govern over how often we want to do these sessions. Yeah.
There we go.
I think that you've got it right. Like the logical flow of like, gonna tell my story, be heard, share that. So we're all kind of decompressing in terms of where we're starting with the emotional, maybe getting down to what it meant for us, and then practicality. Because that'll help maybe, just put that flow in. And I think that'll be very useful.
Oh, ain't gotta be complicated, folks. Well, Nick, I'm happy to chop it up with you and to put together a game plan. This has been the May 23rd edition of the Wise Crowds Design Call. If you have not, leave your contact details in the doc, the design brief doc, so that I can send you your participation badge. I thank you very much for your time, attention, and energy. And as Nicholas said, we are changing the world. So anybody can do it with the surprising power of liberating structures. And I'll see you guys around.
Thank you. You guys.
Nice, thanks.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too.
Bye. And to see you again, Nicholas and Jeremy.
Bye.
Dude,